All right, Sunday night at 8 o'clock. That means it's time for the Brushfire Mind. We're going to talk about the gubernatorial runoff in Georgia, school starting back, gun control, the Ninth Circuit, and bendy straws, and what they all have in common. So buckle up. So last week was interesting. Brian Kemp won the Georgia gubernatorial runoff. It was between him and Casey Cagle. And as it's often said, Casey Cagle is basically the Georgia Republican version of Hillary Clinton. Flips and flops, and he's basically for sale. So I was glad to see my buddy Brian win that one. Now Brian's moving forward. Brian Kemp will be running against Stacy Abrams, who's the Democrat. And her platform is to raise taxes in order to counteract the Trump tax cuts, to repeal campus carry, which is just stupid, and to expand gun control in the state of Georgia. So she's essentially the opposite of Brian Kemp. Kemp is for the expansion of the campus carry and gun rights in general. And I want to talk about that a little bit. The idea of expanding gun rights, I find abhorrent. I find it utterly and entirely offensive that one could consider that gun rights could be expanded. And I feel that way because the Second Amendment is quite plainly absolute. The idea that one should have to get a license to carry a firearm, ludicrous. So, the language of the Second Amendment is quite clear. Shall not be infringed. All right, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Oh, what about the preparatory clause? Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. The preparatory clause is precisely that, a dependent clause which hasn't meaning without the remainder of the sentence. And the remainder of the sentence is plainly clear. One cannot mistake that language unless one does so with malicious intent. Okay, so, and this is not going to be a show about gun rights, but I'm going to end up going into this in more detail in its own segment later. There was a major ruling from the Ninth Circuit in California this past week as well. Amazingly, on the same day that Brian Kemp won the primary, the Ninth Circuit actually found it unconstitutional for California to set restrictions on magazine sizes. So that's amazing. That's amazing on 1,000 levels. And I'm not going to go into the deep details of that one in particular, because what I want to do later this week is I'm going to do a video about gun rights generally, in which I'm going to talk about the dissenting opinions in that Ninth Circuit finding and compare them to the dissenting opinions from the Heller case. In Heller versus D.C., it was a very important case because the opinion penned by Scalia and signed on to by the conservative justices is that the people have a right to keep and bear arms. Basically, the finding in the Heller case is what they call the conservative justices said, well, the Second Amendment says that the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And then Sotomayor and Ginsburg and their ilk, they said, that's not what the Second Amendment says. The Second Amendment says that only the Army and the police can have guns, and that if a citizen owns a gun, you should take it away from them by force and lock them up. So we're going to take a closer look at that Ninth Circuit ruling as well, and the dissenting opinions in that for those kinds of chestnuts, because it's every time you hear the lefties say, well, we don't want to take all your guns away, we want common sense gun control. Bullshit. 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 Every time you hear those words come out of their mouth, they are lying through their teeth. Because the opinion of the left is that there is no right to keep and bear arms. That there is no individual right. Not that it's not their opinion. Okay, it is their opinion that it's immoral to own a firearm and that no person has a need for a firearm. But more importantly, their legal opinion is that the Second Amendment does not guarantee a right of the people to keep and bear arms. And of course, the fact of the matter is that the Second Amendment says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. To interpret those words in any other way is patently dishonest. One cannot do it with a straight face unless you're malicious or ignorant. There's one of the razors, Horath's razor or something. I blank on the guy's name now, but says never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. Well, I'll give you one. If something can be explained by incompetence, then I can attribute it to incompetence rather than malice. Incompetence that is repeated consistently, if you consistently repeat bad decisions with predictable bad results against the advice and wise counsel against those decisions, then incompetence is no longer an excuse. So when you continue to repeat the same mistakes and get bad results, then the only remaining excuse is malice. You know, if your economy falls apart, your health insurance premiums fly through the roof, your GDP never scrapes past 2% growth, and the military might of your enemies abroad continues to grow despite apparent attempts to the contrary, then with enough repetition, it can no longer be assumed that you're an incompetent administrator. It has to be assumed that the executive is malicious. Quite contrarily, if you suddenly post 4.1% and the limeys come to the table to wave the white flag over the trade war, maybe competence is an attribute that one can consider as belonging to the executive. So, Kemp won. But it's a local election. A state, but still local. It's not the Senate race, it's not the midterm, it's not the president. And so of course it was won on a low turnout. I'm sorry, I paused to read comments. Yes, but I'm not going to go into cryptofascism in this show, Rod. I do want to have a longer conversation about cryptofascism. In fact, I think I'd like to start doing the Friday night live hangouts again. But we can talk about that later. So I'll keep this format on Sunday nights, and then we'll start doing the Friday night live hangout the way we used to on Fridays. Where was I? You distracted me, Rod. So, Kemp. I like Brian Kemp. I voted for him. Before, and I've known him for a while. I run into him at GOP meetings here and there, and every now and then when I'm loitering around the Capitol because, my white privilege. Your political involvement should definitely be associated with white privilege, right? Anyway, it was a small turnout. Same day, this was last Tuesday, was when the election was. I went to the Board of Commissioners meeting for my local area's Rockdale County. Rockdale County Board of Commissioners meeting is on Tuesday mornings at 9 o'clock in Old Town Conyers, and I go sit in on those from time to time, and it always alarms me how very, very few people show up to those, how very few citizens show up. And I understand it's 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday, and I'm a firm believer that the Democrats that run the thing put it at that time explicitly because they know it will be inconvenient for the sort of people who are likely to be engaged in government and engaged in local politics. It will be inconvenient and implausible for them to attend. So they fully expect that the only people they're going to be able to get in there are a bunch of unemployed lefty busybodies. And the most likelihood that they're going to see anybody with a conservative bent are people who are retired, who one would hope have better things to do with their time, like travel and eat Spanish bread and drink Italian wine and whatnot. So local politics are important. Your politics are local. Let me tell you something. The way that you vote in your community, the way that your community at large votes, will have an effect on the way your community develops. Now, some Democrat will hear me say something like that, and they'll, dog whistle, racism, blah, blah, blah. Maybe a little bit. It may be reasonable to call me a racist when I say that the way you vote in local elections will affect the direction and composition of your local economy, your local community. But it's only reasonable, it only sounds like a reasonable argument if you view the world through the Democrat lens that operates on the assumption that all non-white people are so inferior to white men that they cannot achieve unless achievement is taken by force from white men and redistributed to colored people and foreigners and so on and so forth. See, I have found it amusing. I'm off on a total tangent that I hadn't intended to talk about tonight. I'm off on a total tangent, but I'm constantly amused by these claims of white supremacy, especially recently from the left. How can you write policy based clearly and almost exclusively on that assumption? Affirmative action, so on and so forth. The soft bigotry of low expectations. That's exactly right, Legion. How can you continue to write policy based almost exclusively on the assumption that black men cannot achieve success unless it is taken from a white man at gunpoint by the government, and pretend like the victims of your violence, that is, taking their success and wealth from them at gunpoint, pretend like the victims of your violence are the racists? That just, it blows my mind that a Democrat, that the party of slavery, the party that opposed the civil rights movement, the party that gave us the Jim Crow laws, the party that gave us the Ku Klux Klan, the party that wrote the Defense of Marriage Act and the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Act, that they can stand there and accuse us of racism and bigotry. It's just amazing to me. How many Irish Democrats do you know? You know, other than the Catholics, Legion. Obviously the Catholics. But that's a whole tangent I hadn't meant to get off on tonight. I wanted to stick to local politics is local, so on and so forth. So, in your community, there's almost certainly, and if you're a Democrat, go do that. Go get involved with your DNC. Get involved with your local Democrat Party. But I would obviously rather you vote Republican. And let me be clear, I vote pretty consistently Republican, not because I am a Republican or because I support the Republican Party in total, but because while Democrats are inherently evil, the Republican Party fucks up slower. Democrats act maliciously. Republicans act incompetently. And unfortunately, that's what we're stuck with. We are stuck with choosing until Donald Trump ran for office. We were stuck with choosing between malice and incompetence. Those were our options. I'm sorry, the camera's just too close. I can't stand me. I can't stand me this crammed up into the camera right now. That's a little better. I mean, it's right up my damn nose. Kemp versus his surgeons. Yeah. That's right, Legion. The Kennedy Catholic Democrat Americans are gone. Why do you think Trump won PA, Michigan, and Wisconsin? That's Wisconsin? Yeah. Yes. Rod says until Trump it was neocon and neoliberal, and yeah, they're the same thing. Going back to Bush 1. I absolutely agree. I'm sure, Rod, I'm sure you remember me saying this when I was a flippant teenager hanging out in a Waffle House in the middle of the night. I never liked the first Bush. I didn't vote for him the first time because his eyes were too close together. And that would have been the first time I could vote in a presidential election. I hated the Democrat, but I couldn't vote for Bush because his eyes were too close together, and I just didn't trust it. I didn't trust it. I did vote for him the second time because it was him or Kerry, and while he bumbled the overall response to 9/11, the total response to 9/11 should have been such a large number of casualties that enemy morale was smashed and the war was over within a few weeks. If he'd had the nutsack to do it right, we would not have conflict in the Middle East today. If we had had a president with a scrotum in 2001, there would not be, ISIS would never have occurred. There would never have been an ISIS. Frankly, if it was Donald Trump and Mad Dog General Jim Mattis in 2001, there would have been no ISIS. And I probably would not have gotten an opportunity to go to war because, frankly, we'd have been done long before I went over there in 2010. But y'all are dragging me off on tangents. School's back. Okay. Kids are going back to school tomorrow. And I want to talk about public schools a little bit. And this ties back into the whole elections thing because all politics is local. I was asked a couple of years ago to run for the Board of Education here locally. Several people asked me, and who knows, maybe I could have done it, but I did not want to. I had too many volunteer gigs going on at the time. I did not need another job that didn't pay any money. So, yeah. But at the same time, lots of boards of education, local boards of education. In fact, I think most of them do have the public sessions, and you can go in there, ask questions, and pitch temper tantrum, make noise. Desire to know more intensifies. Legion, I want you to remember the promise you made me about your crusades. Don't you forget that shit. You give me a call and I will bring my horde. Oh, anyway. So you can go to the Board of Education, you can sit in on the meetings, you can ask questions, you can raise your hand, you can pitch a temper tantrum if you want to. And we need to. The question that every parent needs to be asking is, why are we as parents being asked to buy supplies that the school should be buying? Okay? I'm going to buy my kid notebooks and pencils, pens, obviously, right? If my kid needs a laptop, the school's going to provide my 8-year-old a laptop. But they can't find the money to buy hand sanitizer and facial tissue and... Wait, what? What? And we hear complaints. We hear complaints that teachers are having to buy school supplies. They're having to spend their own money on school supplies. Oh, I hope I don't have to get up to adjust this thing in the middle of the show. Anyway, we hear complaints that teachers are having to spend money to buy school supplies during the year. And it's stuff that the school should be buying. And when we're talking about, facial tissue, Kleenex, toilet paper, right? You're telling, and we hear that the teachers are underpaid, and I'll get to the teachers being underpaid in a minute, because that's a crock of shit. That's an absolute lie. There's a big damn difference between not making as much as you think you want to make and being underpaid. Because I went to public schools. I spent some time in some public schools, and I guarantee you, if I had employees that were as competent as most of the teachers that I had in public schools, I would close the damn business. If the ratio of competence in a business that I was running was that low, if I had allowed it to get that bad, I would give it up, because it would be apparent that I was in the wrong business. So here's the problem. Here's the problem that's happening. On average, the number of teachers teaching in schools has increased by 20 to 30%, while the number of administrators employed by the schools has increased by, on average, state to state, by 170% since the mid-90s. Okay? Think about that for a minute. They've felt the need to hire 20% more teachers. And for some reason, to deal with 20% more teachers, they've had to nearly double the number of administrators that they're paying. Now that's interesting. Y'all know that the teachers have a union and the administrators have a union. Those two unions lobby separately. They negotiate separately. Think about that. you have two unions, two public unions, which are taxpayer funded, competing with one another for a share of a taxpayer budget. You have tax money paying people to argue over who gets more tax money, and then those unions who are tax paid lobby for tax money, for tax funding to be increased. And somehow they can't afford to give my 8-year-old a Kleenex. Oh, and yeah, homework. Okay, I'm losing it here. It's I've got my mic and my camera on a new stand, and I guess I missed something when I was setting it up, so it's kind of lilting on me and falling apart. Yeah. So, when a teacher complains that they're underpaid, I don't hear that much differently than I hear burger flippers crying for a $15 minimum wage. You are not worth more than you're being paid. Okay, some of you have heard this story. Hell, Rod probably remembers when it happened. I was in an algebra class, and I don't see Cameron watching right now, but I bet he's going to listen to it tomorrow morning, and he'll get a chuckle out of hearing this. I don't think I've told this story on the air. I had a teacher in high school, and I'm not going to say his name. He was a good guy. I liked the professor. I liked the teacher. He was a military veteran, and he was teaching algebra. Good guy, pretty smart. Young teacher. He was teaching algebra, and we were on imaginary numbers. You know, the square root of negative I and all that. Or rather, I is the square root of -1, because you can't take the square root of a negative something. You know, if you know imaginary numbers, then you probably have better. If you know imaginary numbers, not if you've heard of imaginary numbers. If you know imaginary numbers, then you probably have a little more than a high school education. Because let me tell you, that was something that the teacher could not handle, and we had an argument about it. He explained, this is what imaginary numbers are, and I asked this question, and I asked the question, and I immediately understood that I sounded like an asshole for asking the question. And before he could react, I restated the question. Because I asked the question, when are we going to use this? And I saw his eyes flare, and he started to give me that. Well, and I was like, no. I'm sorry. I know what that sounds like. I don't mean, hey, I think this is useless because I'm never going to use it. No. I'm legitimately interested because I don't know. I would like to know, what sort of math is the imaginary number for? What is this something that I would use if I went into astrophysics? If I went into theoretical, different types of theoretical models? If I went into string theory? What discipline of science or mathematics is this type of math useful for? And it was too late. He was already incensed. We went back and forth at each other a few times, and then he threw his marker at me. And I stood up, and I've been 6.5 feet tall and over 300 pounds since I was like 16 or 17 years old. So in a high school classroom, I stood up and I slid my desk off and set it down, And he got up in my face. He was a good foot shorter than I am. And he told me to go to the principal's office. And I did. And I was suspended for a week. And on the piece of paper was written, suspended for towering. That was it. The reason for the suspension, for towering. Didn't say I made a threat. Didn't say I took a pop at him. Didn't say I used any foul language, because I didn't. It just said towering. And I looked at the principal, Mr. Biddy. I looked at the principal, and this time I could not contain my foul language. I just looked at it and I said, towering? What the fuck? How is that a thing? And that's what took it from a 3-day suspension to a 1 week. Anyway, the point of that story, though, that teacher was a good guy, and I liked him. And I after the week was up, I went back to class. And I was still in his class. I finished out the year with him, and we never had an argument like that again. It was he he misunderstood he didn't. I misspoke when I asked the question too flippantly to begin with. When I asked the question, just what are we going to use this for in that way? I know I sounded like every other asshole kid that ever said, when am I ever going to need algebra? I'm not going to be a scientist or whatever. I plan on growing up to be a travel novelist. I'm never going to need no, right? So my whole plan there, the intent was to understand what discipline it went in, and I asked the question wrong. That's on me, and I didn't. But he lost his temper a little too fast before I was able to clarify. No. I really want to know. I'm really genuinely curious. But of course, we could lay some of that on the parents. Even back then in the mid-90s, you lay a lot of that on the parents, because bad parents had caused this poor teacher to have been inundated with ungrateful, unattentive, shithead kids that were not genuinely curious about what their education could do, what the value of that education was, or whether or not, one of the things that I was always genuinely curious about when I was coming up through school, I was genuinely interested in whether or not the teachers with whom my education had been entrusted by the government were competent to provide me an education. And the answer, of course, is by a large margin, no. And yes, Julie, public school funding is via taxes, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But by a large margin, now, I'm toot my own horn a little bit. I am an exceptional case. As a young boy, I was above and beyond. I was reading Edith Hamilton mythology when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. I first read 1984 when I was about 10 or 11, maybe. The first time I read Stranger in a Strange Land and The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, I was probably 12 or 13, maybe 14. I read Crime and Punishment when I was 13. By the time I was sitting in that classroom with the algebra teacher and had that argument, I already spoke Spanish fluently and read Latin as pretty fluently. Not to toot my own horn. I mean, obviously, I'm a bit of a megalomaniac. I don't have a problem talking about how awesome I am. But my point is that as a bar of measure, I'm a little bit above and beyond. But even given the magnitude of my mind and the improbability of a competent professor being assigned to deal with something of this absolute magnitude, to look at the average person, dumber than whom half the people are, and expect the teachers that I came up with to be able to educate those people in a meaningful way. Even the average, 95 to 110 IQ Joe Schmucky out there that will probably never read another book after he graduates high school, and probably doesn't keep a lot of advanced trigonometry in his back pocket for doing complex engineering and architectural work. Even those guys are drastically underserved by the competency, and I use that word lightly when I'm referring to public school teachers, by the competency of these teachers. And in many cases, these teachers, and don't get me wrong, I had a few teachers who were absolutely outstanding. John Robinson is a brilliant man. Mr. Duke was absolutely brilliant. I mean, his understanding of history was outstanding. But truly, professors, teachers that had a true mastery of their subject matter, they're not teaching in public schools. They're teaching in universities and the like. And even that, the bulk of the university professors I've encountered are of higher quality and higher competency than the average high school teacher that I encountered in my pub. And I moved. Okay, I got around a little bit. I didn't move as much as some military brats, but I've dealt with public school teachers all up and down the East Coast. It's not just the six in my tiny little BF nowhere town. This is an opinion that has been formed by observing teachers from many, many different areas, with many diverse political positions. Okay, I apologize. I've stopped to read the comment. Rod points out that they focused more on the candlesticks in 1984 than the content. So when I read 1984 in a literature class in high school, that was it was either the third or fourth time I'd read the book. And yeah, we spent like a week talking about the metaphoric significance of the flipping paperweight. And that was just obnoxious. But anyway, so these teachers are they're being paid what they're worth. I could probably make a good argument that they're being paid more than what they're worth. And in many, many cases, the teachers that you're talking about, it's largely because this is an entry-level job for you. This is you're in your mid-20s. I had a lot of teachers that were in their mid-20s, fresh out of college, hadn't traveled, hadn't studied, apart from getting their teaching degree and teaching certificate. And you see, I'm further up the screen. This thing is killing me. I'm sorry. I will take special pains to fix this damn to fix this damn tripod before next week's show, or I'll just buy another one. Or I've got another one over there I can use. But anyway, we're not playing this game next week. Sorry, guys. So, teachers buying supplies for the kids. Now I'm too far down the screen, but I imagine it's going to catch me up in a minute. Teachers having to buy supplies for the kids. Parents having to buy supplies. Okay, so the kids are getting ready to go back to school, and they send us a shopping list. And the shopping list is, oh, well, we need you to buy enough crayons for every student that's going to be in the class. We need to buy you enough Nope. Notepads for your students could be in the class for the year. We need to... Wait. So, they're asking every parent to buy everything for every child, as if the expectation is next year no parents are going to be able to buy anything, so we'll just dip into last year's stock. What the hell is happening to the money that we're giving you? You know what, Julie? I bought a pretty nice... and that's a whole story. I actually bought a system for that reason. And it doesn't work right. But I can't return it because of a shipping error where I ended up getting it for free by accident. And I'm not willing to... I've got the damn thing. I just got to... I don't know. I'll take it apart and see what I can do with it, maybe. Anyway. Oh. Okay, I'm reading some comments. Okay. Yes, y'all were having the "where's the money" conversation. Here's what I want to get at, though. It's one thing to have the conversation with your friends, to complain, to bring it up at the dinner table and say, I think it's bullshit that I should have to buy the supplies that the school should be buying with the tax money that they're already given, and have the wife roll her eyes at you across the table because she doesn't want to hear you talk about it anymore. Because you're kind of a right-wing nut job and you talk about that shit too much because taxation is theft and where's my liberty? Politics is local. You've got to go and vote on these Board of Education representatives. And you've got to go in there. We need to be going into the Board of Education meetings and asking the question, how many administrators do you really need? If the school cannot afford to pay the teachers what they want to be paid or what the school wants to pay them, because the school is telling us that they don't pay the teachers enough too. The school is saying we don't pay enough money. The teachers are saying they don't get paid enough money. Here in Conyers, in Rockdale County, we've got three shifty Democrats on the Board of Commissioners that keep trying to jack up taxes and scam us with these bullshit mandatory garbage pickup deals. Thank God that got defeated. You got to hold them to account and ask the questions. Go to the Board of Education meetings, ask if you cannot afford, if the school's budgets do not make room in them for pencils and paper, let alone hand sanitizer or Kleenex, if the school's budget can't make room for pencils and paper, fire administrators. And on a couple of levels. One, you're paying too many administrators to do whatever it is they're doing. And two, if you're having budget shortfalls, it's because you have not only too many administrators, but they're not competent, because the maintenance of the budget, the writing and adherence of the budget, is part of their damn job. If you've got twice as many administrators as you do teachers, and the budget is whack, it's because you have too many people. You're paying too many people to do a bad job. Frankly, if you're if you have budget shortfalls in a public school, the correct answer is not to cut back on the number of administrators that you have. It is to fire all of them and replace them with a staff that is 1/4 the size. Yeah, Rod mentions textbooks. That is a racket. I'm not going to dig into the textbook racket a whole lot right now because it's a little more off topic. No, it's not off topic. Okay, let's talk about the cost of education. Talk about the cost of college a little bit. Let's say, for example, a large number of Americans are paying more than half of their income in rent. The rent is too damn high. And so we pass a federal law which gives a tax credit to people who are paying more than 50% of their income in rent. The question, and yeah, this was a Facebook meme that I saw posted earlier, but it's dead nuts. Spot TF on. What are you gonna spend that extra rent money on? What are you gonna spend that extra money on? Okay. First things first. Anytime I hear somebody use the words extra money, I get concerned. I ain't never had an extra dollar in my life. I've had thousands of dollars in savings. I've had money in investments. I've had cash in my pocket. But I ain't never had a dollar I didn't want. I ain't never had a surplus where I was concerned that they might rot in the field. There's no such thing as extra money. There is only more money. How much is enough? More. How do you get it? Work. Go out and make money. There's a reason. This is a funny little linguistic thing that even less interested, less involved linguists seem to miss. Legion might have thought about this. We might have had a conversation about this. Remind me if we've talked about this before, Legion. In Spanish, you say ganar dinero. In Korean, you say donul shit patayo. You receive, in Korean, you receive money. In Spanish, you earn money. In all of the Romance languages, Spanish, Italian, Basque, Portuguese, so it's Roman, or Latin, obviously, and all of the French, all of the Romance languages. Did I get them all? I missed one. But in all of the Romance languages, you earn money. If you were to say, voy a hacer dinero, you're counterfeiting. You're talking about going and printing illegal money. But in English, while we have the phrase to earn money and it makes sense, we say make money. And that's not an accident, especially in American English. In Democrat, you get money. That's actually another vernacular twist that is worth a whole different conversation, Rod. You ever heard somebody ask, hey, let me hold $1. Let me hold $1. No. Where are you going to hold it? What are you going to do with it? Am I getting it back? Shit on you. Cactos tatris dengue. Does that mean to earn or does it mean to create? Does it mean to make? Rod, the dos taitus dengue. But we say make money because as capitalists, We understand that wealth is created. You can make wealth. You can create wealth. You can take disparate parts and combine them into a manufactured whole of greater value and trade it away for more value than you could have traded those parts. It means to get money. Okay, so Russian too. It is pretty linguistically unique to English that we say make money. Now, so half your money goes to rent, and the government comes in and offers a subsidy in the form of a tax credit. What do you spend that extra money on? You're going to spend it on rent. You're going to spend that extra money on rent because as soon as the landlord understands that the government is paying part of your rent, they're going to raise your rent to make up the difference. That's how college got so expensive. You go to the table and you say, hey, I'd like a college education, and the administration says, well, the bursar says, okay, that'll be $20,000. And you say, well, I can't afford $20,000. I can only afford $10,000. And then the government says, well, we can chip in the other $10,000. And the school says, okay, now where are we going to get the other $10,000 to make it up to 30? Because that's what we said. We said $30,000 to begin with, right? No, you said $10,000. Or you said $20,000. So the next year you come back and it's, oh, well, last year we wanted $20,000 for an education, but you couldn't afford that, so you came in $10,000. The government came in $10,000. So now it's $20,000. So now it's going to be $25,000, and the government goes ahead and ponies up the rest of it. And they ratchet the price up. It gets ratcheted up that way. And every college does it because every college does it. It's a kind of a chicken and the egg argument. If one college does it and another one doesn't, if you're a college and you don't take advantage of the money that you can steal from these students, then you cannot hire competitively to have the best professors and so on and so forth, and you're not a marketable education facility. So as soon as you add, if you want more of something, you subsidize it. If you want less of something, you tax it. That's why Democrats like to subsidize indoctrination and tax wealth. If you want more of something, you subsidize it. If you want less of something, you tax it. Anybody who starts talking about taxing wealth, that should be a red flag right there. I've gotten on a bit of a roll, and I'm afraid I might go on too far if I keep going. So I'm gonna wrap it up, but I'm gonna leave you with this. Since I mentioned the taxation thing, politics is local. Get out and vote. Remember the midterms are coming up. We're going to be talking more and more about the midterms because there are a lot of absolute shitbags on the chopping block this year. And guys, I think that we are going to see a total red wave this year as the Democrat Party realizes that insults and rhetoric and tax increases and gun control and bans on bendy straws and identity politics just aren't the things that people are going to go vote for. We're going to see a red wave as they collectively shit themselves until they suffer rectal hemorrhaging from the shock of the sudden realization of the failure of the identity politic and socialism. And I'm looking forward to that. So, until next week, remember, if you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. But if you set a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life. Good night.
you.